He was invisible. No college degree, no money, no English. Just a Ukrainian immigrant cleaning offices by day and teaching himself to code by night. Nobody believed in him. In fact, 152 investors told him his idea was worthless, too simple, a waste of time. But what no one tells you is that simplicity was the secret. You won't believe this, but the guy who once lived off food stamps, he would go on to sell that same worthless idea for $19 billion to the very company that once rejected him. This is the shocking story of Jan Koum, the founder of WhatsApp. And if you've ever felt ignored, rejected, or completely off the map, then you need to hear what really happened, because this changed everything. It almost didn't work, but what he did next might just change the way you see your own journey. Invisible childhood didn't grow up in Silicon Valley. He wasn't surrounded by venture capital or summer coding camps. Jan Koum was born in a small Ukrainian village where just having hot water was considered a luxury. His family didn't have a car, let alone a computer. The idea of building a billion-dollar tech company? That wasn't even in the realm of dreams. It was survival mode every single day. And in places like that, you learn quickly, no one's coming to save you. You either fight or disappear. At 16, Jan and his mother packed what little they had and boarded a one-way flight to America. No English, no money, no safety net. They landed in Mountain View, the heart of tech innovation, but couldn't feel further away from it. Jan didn't feel like a future founder. He felt like a ghost. He walked past companies that would one day beg for his attention, but back then, no one even looked at him. You won't believe this, but he was invisible in the land of opportunity. His mom cleaned houses, he cleaned office floors. Food stamps kept them alive. Jan used to collect discarded soda cans just to help with rent. This was the American dream, but on nightmare mode, and yet he didn't complain. There was something in him, something wired for grit. And though the world didn't see him yet, he was watching everything, studying the system, learning its cracks. No one saw it coming, but the truth revealed itself in the silence. At school, he wasn't the popular kid. He wasn't the sports guy. He wasn't even the nerd. He was just there. A name teachers struggled to pronounce, a kid who faded into the background. But behind that quiet face was a mind absorbing every detail. He'd watch how people moved, how they talked, how they connected, and more importantly, how they didn't. It almost didn't work, this whole American escape plan. But that's the hidden lesson. Being invisible can be your greatest training ground. He once said he loved libraries because they didn't care how much money you had. Think about that. While most teens were chasing parties, he was chasing pages. He would read programming manuals for hours, not because someone told him to, but because it made him feel in control. It gave him power when the world gave him nothing. That's what no one tells you. Hunger makes the best developers. Not just hunger for food, but hunger to never be ignored again. And then things got worse. His mom got sick. The bills piled up. There were moments they didn't know if they'd make it to the next month. That version of the story doesn't go viral. The nights crying in silence, the moments where giving up seemed logical. But this is the shocking story behind it all. He kept going. Not because he had hope, but because stopping wasn't an option. There's a kind of motivation that doesn't need motivation. That was Jan's fuel. You know what's wild? While other kids worried about prom or college essays, Jan was figuring out how to survive in a new world with a sick mother and no roadmap. He wasn't building a resume, he was building resilience. And that changed everything. Every rejection, every cold shoulder, every time he was overlooked, it became data, not in a spreadsheet, but in his soul. Learn from this mistake. If you wait for recognition before starting, you'll never start. People like to glamorize the humble beginning story. But this wasn't humble, it was brutal, it was lonely. It was endless hours of silence interrupted only by doubt. He had no safety net, no father figure, no mentor telling him, "You got this." Just instinct. Just raw persistence. And still, What really happened in that period is what built him. Because that's where the secret behind it all lives. In the dark years no one talks about. Sometimes, the world doesn't clap because it hasn't noticed you. Yet, that doesn't mean you're not growing. Jan was planting seeds no one could. See, while others were networking, he was absorbing. While others were pitching, he was building something deeper inside himself. And the world still blind to his existence. This is where most people give up, but Jan wasn't like most people. And the story was only getting started. He didn't have fancy gear, didn't know the right people, didn't even speak the language fluently, but he had something else, a spark. The kind you can't buy or fake, the kind forged in real struggle. And although no one knew his name yet, something was brewing. And soon, everything, every scar, every silence, every sleepless night would begin to make sense. But first, he'd have to clean a few more toilets. Asterisk asterisk. The cleaner and the books be day. He was scrubbing office floors. By night, he was reading code. Jan Koum, still invisible to the world, was now a janitor at a local tech company. Not as an intern, not in IT, literally mop and bucket in hand. You won't believe this, but he cleaned the very buildings where tech giants brainstormed their next billion-dollar idea. He wasn't in the meetings. He was picking up after them, but what no one tells you is that greatness often enters through the back door. He couldn't afford a computer. So he borrowed time at the library. That place became his temple. Every manual on C++, every guide to networking protocols, he devoured like it was oxygen. No one was watching and no one cared. That's what makes this story so powerful. It almost didn't work. There was no cheerleader, no promise of payoff. Just one kid, a dirty uniform, and a hunger to learn what schools weren't teaching. It's a hidden lesson for anyone feeling stuck. Libraries still change lives. Jan wasn't just reading. He was reverse engineering systems in his mind. While others were watching sitcoms, he was studying TCP, IP stack logic. The truth revealed itself in how he approached learning. Not for a grade, but for survival. No diploma, no credentials, just sheer will. He was an autodidact in its rawest form. And here's the shocking story. Most people quit when there's no reward. He kept going. With zero promise of anything at all. Imagine this. Every night, exhausted from janitorial work, hands raw from chemicals, he'd walk into the library like a man on a mission. While the world swiped through early social media, he was debugging practice scripts from books 10 years old. No social circle, no social life. Just sacrifice, and yet, he loved it. That was his edge. And it changed everything because pain becomes tolerable when you're chasing something real. You won't find this on a resume, but one day, Jan stayed up 28 hours straight trying to solve a bug from a sample exercise in a programming book. He failed for 27 hours and cracked it on the 28th. That's what no one tells you about success. It's not sexy. It's lonely, boring, grueling, but it's those reps, the invisible ones, that prepare you for the moment when the world finally notices. And they will, eventually. If you've ever felt like you're too far behind to catch up, learn from this mistake. Jan started with nothing, but he was consistent. He didn't binge learn, he just didn't stop. And that matters more than you think. Instead of dreaming about being a coder, he became one. Slowly, painfully, relentlessly, and if you're wondering where to start, try books like Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs or The Pragmatic Programmer. Start where he started, even when no job offer came, even when no one called back, even when friends told him to be realistic. Jan kept studying. That's the secret behind it. Obsession without external validation. He didn't need a diploma to prove he was a developer. His skills would speak for themselves, eventually, because what really happened in those silent years was the forging of a mindset most people never develop. The one that doesn't break under rejection. He didn't have mentors, but he had questions and he hunted answers like a wolf. Forums, open source communities, even asking strangers at cafes with laptops. What language is that? He was building knowledge brick by brick, no shortcuts. And that's where the hidden lesson lives, in becoming so good they can't ignore you. It's not just a quote, it's a lifestyle, one that pays off. When you're ready to bleed for it, and here's something wild, many of the skills he learned while cleaning floors, like watching patterns, spotting inefficiencies, and managing time down to the second, ended up helping him write cleaner, faster, more intuitive code. That's what no one saw coming. He turned every part of his life into a classroom. Even his mop taught him something. Most people wait for ideal conditions to grow. He grew inside chaos, but still, despite all that effort, a question haunted him. Will this ever work? Because learning alone isn't enough. You still need someone to believe in you. And that was the next mountain, getting in front of investors. Pitching an idea born from all that sacrifice, convincing someone, anyone, to give him a shot, and that's when things got brutal. The rejections were about to come, all 152 of them. The 152 rejection style. Ever put your whole soul into something and get laughed out of the room? That's exactly what happened to Jan Koum. After years of study, pain, and quiet obsession, he finally had something, a concept, an app that prioritized privacy, simplicity, and real communication. No ads, no noise, just messages. You won't believe this, but when he presented it to investors, they said it was too basic, pointless, it'll never catch on. And that was just the beginning. Investor after investor passed. They didn't just say no, they dismissed him. One even said, "This could have been built in a weekend." Another asked, "Why would anyone use this instead of texting?" It hurt deep, because this wasn't just a pitch. It was him, all his hours, all his hunger, all his hope, and every rejection felt like a punch to the gut. But here's what no one tells you: rejection isn't the end. It's the pressure that shapes the diamond. He kept count. 152 rejections, let that sink in. That's 152 meetings, emails, calls, pitches, and letdowns. Most people would have stopped at 5, maybe 10, but not him. He had something deeper, not just belief in his product, but belief in why he built it. He knew what really happened in communication. People wanted honesty, speed, and freedom. Investors didn't get it yet, but he knew the world would. Eventually. Imagine waking up every day, preparing for another no, and doing it anyway. That's the hidden lesson here. You don't push forward because it's fun. You push forward because something in you refuses to die. And after each rejection, Jan would tweak, adjust, refine, not the idea, the story. Because the truth revealed itself. Sometimes people don't fund the product. They fund the narrative, and he had to learn how to tell it right. One night, after his 100th rejection, he told a friend, "Maybe I should just stop." And for a moment, he meant it. It almost didn't work. He'd put everything into this. No backup plan, no safety net. But something told him, keep going. Just one more, that's all it takes. One more email, one more pitch, one more yes. He didn't need 152. He just needed one. The right one. If you've ever had a dream people laughed at, remember this. Jan's idea didn't change. The world around it did. Timing, persistence, and obsession are the 3 ingredients behind every shocking story of success. He was the same person on pitch number 1 and pitch number 152, but with each rejection, he got better at explaining his vision. And that made all the difference. What no one tells you is, sometimes the only thing that needs to evolve is your delivery. Let's pause here and think practically. If you're facing constant rejection, maybe it's not your idea that's broken, maybe it's how you're presenting it. Record yourself pitching, ask a stranger to listen. Rewrite the intro line 10 times. Jan did. He studied how others communicated, how they framed value. Learn from this mistake. Never assume they'll just get it. Make them feel it. Make them want it. What's crazy is, many of the companies that rejected him now depend on WhatsApp for internal communication. That's the irony. The same desks that told him no now have Slack threads saying, let's create something like WhatsApp. This changed everything because once his app exploded, those 152 rejections, they became his fuel, his badge of honor. Prove that the experts didn't always know best, and then, finally, the yes came, a quiet investor, someone who saw past the simplicity, who understood that simple was the point. That's when things shifted, and you won't believe this. The person who said yes didn't just invest money. They invested belief that was worth more than any check. It was the emotional turning point, a moment that made all the pain worth it. The silence finally broke, and then the impossible happened. WhatsApp began to grow, silently, no millionaire marketing, no exaggerated promises, only real connection, and an idea that survived the contempt of 152 closed doors. But Jan still had no idea that someone much bigger was already keeping an eye on everything. The creation of WhatsApp, no flashy logo, no press release, no launch party. Just a basic app that did one thing really well: send a message from one phone to another, fast, clean, private. That was it. WhatsApp wasn't built to impress investors. It was built to serve users. Jan Koum wanted something honest. Something that didn't steal your data, didn't beg for your attention, didn't shove ads in your face. You won't believe this, but that simple philosophy? It sparked a global revolution. From the start, he and co-founder Brian Acton had a rule: no ads, no gimmicks, no nonsense. WhatsApp was built with engineers in mind, not marketers. And that's what no one saw coming. While others focused on viral growth hacks, they focused on building trust. Real trust between friends, families, coworkers. And slowly, country by country, phone by phone, WhatsApp began to spread like wildfire without anyone really noticing. You know that friend who just gets you without needing to say much. That's what WhatsApp became for millions. A quiet companion, no filters, no likes, no algorithm. Just pure, unfiltered connection. And here's the shocking story. The less noise the app made, the more people loved it. What really happened is that, while every other app shouted for attention, WhatsApp whispered, and people listened. It wasn't about engagement time. It was about respect for users' privacy. Respect for their time. Jan refused to collect data, refused to sell user behavior in a world obsessed with monetization. That was radical. And yet, that's what changed everything. People felt safe, seen, and that emotional connection made WhatsApp not just a product, but a movement built on values, not vanity. The irony? Jan, the guy who once felt invisible, created an app that helped others feel seen. That's the secret behind it. His pain became his blueprint. He knew what it was like to feel ignored, so he built something that would never ignore the people using it. What no one tells you is this: the best innovations aren't technical. They're emotional. WhatsApp wasn't solving a tech problem. It was solving a human one, and yet, they never spent a dime on advertising. Think about that. No Facebook ads. No YouTube pre-rolls, just word of mouth. A brother in India telling his sister in London. A friend in Brazil sharing it with his cousin in Portugal. And every download was a vote of confidence, proof that simplicity still works. It almost didn't work because most people thought you had to scream to be noticed. Jan proved the opposite. If you're building something right now, take this as your lesson. Don't chase trends, chase truth. Build for real people, not imaginary KPIs. Jan read every user review like it was a personal letter. He fixed bugs at 3 a.m. He updated servers manually to avoid outages. That's what no one saw, the quiet, gritty commitment behind the screen. There was no shortcut, just obsession with excellence. And the funny thing? While competitors bragged about engagement, Jan focused on the one metric no one could fake: loyalty. WhatsApp wasn't flashy, but it was family. That's why it thrived in places with unstable governments, limited data, or tight-knit communities. It worked fast, cost little, and didn't ask for anything in return. That's what really happened. Connection without condition. Behind every line of code was a deeper purpose. Jan didn't want users, he wanted freedom for people. Freedom to talk, to share, to stay human in a world turning robotic. You won't believe this, but even as WhatsApp exploded, Jan still refused to put ads in the app. Everyone said, "You're leaving billions on the table." He didn't care because it wasn't about tables. It was about trust, but what he didn't know was that someone had been watching, quietly, patiently, a name from Jan's past. A name that had once tried and failed to hire him, and now this name was ready to make a move, the biggest move of all, Zuckerberg's message on day. Jan Koum gets a message. Not from a user, not from an investor, but from someone who once turned him down. Mark Zuckerberg, yeah, that Zuckerberg, the same guy whose company didn't hire Jan years earlier, was now asking to talk. You won't believe this. The guy who mopped floors and got 150 to no's now had the CEO of Facebook in his inbox. And not just for a chat, Zuckerberg wanted to buy WhatsApp. At first, Jan hesitated. He wasn't building to sell, he wasn't building for anyone else. He was building because he believed in what he'd made, but Mark didn't just throw numbers around, he threw vision. He said, "You've built something special. Let's take it to the next level together." What really happened was a clash of philosophies, scale versus simplicity, but Zuckerberg knew, if you can't outbuild them, buy them, and the number? $19 billion. $19 billion at the time, the largest acquisition in Facebook's history and one of the largest in tech history, period. All for an app that people said it was too simple. This changed everything. Jan had gone from food stamps to Forbes, from rejection to redemption, from invisible to undeniable. The truth revealed itself, not in code, but in conviction. On the day of the signing, Jan returned to the same building where he and his mom used to collect food stamps. Only this time, he wasn't waiting in line. He was signing the deal of a lifetime on the door of that very building. Let that sink in. That's not just poetic, that's personal. That's a hidden lesson we often forget. Your past pain can become your most powerful statement. Jan didn't throw a party. He didn't buy a Lamborghini. He didn't become a social media show-off. Instead, he stayed quiet, grounded, focused. That's what no one tells you. Real success doesn't need to scream. It's often silent, humble, deep. He wasn't just rich, he was free. And that, to him, meant more than any title or trophy. If you're chasing success, ask yourself, is it freedom you want or attention? Jan chose freedom. That's why he walked away from the deal with more than money. He walked away with peace. And here's the shocking story. He kept his values intact. He stayed committed to privacy, even clashed with Facebook leadership later because of it. He'd made his point. He built his empire his way. Most people never get to prove the doubters wrong. Jan did, quietly, and yet the victory wasn't about revenge. It was about validation. Every rejection, every no, every moment of invisibility had led to this. What no one saw coming was that the kid no one believed in had just made one of the boldest, cleanest exits in Silicon Valley history. Even years after the deal, WhatsApp remained one of the most used messaging apps on Earth. Billions of users. No ads, no clutter, just connection. Jan had planted something timeless. And it all started with pain, with purpose, and with a mop. What really happened here isn't just business, it's a blueprint for building with integrity. And in that moment, as the ink dried and the cameras flashed, Jan smiled, not for the headlines, not for the billion-dollar valuation, but because, finally, he was no longer invisible. He had walked through fire and walked out with the world in his pocket. But the real question isn't how he got rich. It's what his story means for you, because rejection is just redirection. So what's the lesson here? That rejection isn't a wall, it's a compass. Jan Koum was told no 152 times. But all he needed was one yes, one door to crack open. One person to believe the world saw a janitor. He saw a future. You won't believe this, but the man behind WhatsApp wasn't lucky. He was relentless, and that's the part most people miss. Rejection doesn't define you, it redirects you. If you've ever felt invisible, this story should hit different, because Jan was invisible for most of his life. Not because he wasn't smart, but because no one bothered to look. He didn't build WhatsApp to be famous, he built it so people could feel heard in a world where he had once been silenced. What no one tells you is, your silence can become your strength and your worst moments. Your greatest assets. This changed everything, not just for Jan, but for communication itself. Billions of people now connect across borders, families stay close, businesses thrive because one man didn't give up after 152 rejections. That's the shocking story behind every overnight success. It's never overnight, it's sweat, it's sacrifice. It's showing up when the world walks away. So ask yourself, how many no's are you willing to hear before you stop? 5, 10, 50. What if the 153rd was the one that changed your life? Don't learn from success, learn from pain. Because what really happened with Jan wasn't magic, it was strategy, it was belief. And it was doing the work before the spotlight ever showed up. Let's make it practical. Feeling stuck? Start with what you can control. Read books like Deep Work by Cal Newport or The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Learn one new skill a month. Pitch your idea to 3 people a week, even if they say no. Especially if they say no, because every no builds your story. And eventually, someone will say yes. Jan's journey is more than a startup projection story. It's a reminder that where you start means nothing compared to how you finish. If you're broke, invisible, tired, good, that's where the real ones are made. You don't need the world to see you yet. You just need to keep building until they can't ignore you anymore. Rejection isn't your enemy. It's your co-pilot. Ride with it. Let it sharpen you. Let it humble you. Then, when the moment comes, let it fuel your launch. Just like Jan, just like WhatsApp, just like every great story you've ever admired. Because the secret behind it all is that it almost didn't happen. So, if you've ever felt like giving up, don't. If Jan Koum could rise from cleaning floors to signing a $19 billion deal, what excuse do we really have? The game isn't over. Not even close. If you found power in this story, hit that subscribe button. Join us for more stories the world almost forgot, because your breakthrough might be one video away. And don't forget to turn on notifications. We've got more untold legends coming soon.